Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by COOP Ale Works. It's the second episode of Season 5. We are recording this on Thursday, October 5th, which means the Thunder has now wrapped up day 3 of training camp. So we're going to give you all of the training camp observations so far this week. We also have an exclusive interview with one and only Chet Holmgren that Nick Gallo got to do. And later on, stick around because Royce Young, our very own Royce Young, got a chance to spend some time with him as well. So we've got a lot to cover. And this is always just such an exciting time of year, getting a chance to not only see these guys, but hear how they're gelling, how they're getting together on the floor for the first time in such a formal setting.
Yeah, I mean, you buried the lead by not mentioning our brand new desk here inside of our lovely studio inside Paycom Center. But no, you're right, Paris. This is so awesome to see these guys together on the floor, an opportunity for them to all reconnect in a more formal way. We know that they've been working out piecemeal throughout the summer, but Royce, and from what you're getting to see as well, like these guys really forming those bonds right now. That internal competition is stoking very high at the moment.
No doubt about it. And like you said, Nick, I mean, this is something that has kind of become standard with the Thunder over the years of training camp. Really, it starts, the day after media day, but these guys have been working together pretty extensively in the gym already. And but just kind of the nature of what they do together is that there is a lot of competition, whether it's in simple, shooting competitions or whatever. I know we're going to talk about some of that, but or just the way that they compete against each other on the floor. It truly is like an iron sharpens iron type of mentality. And so you can see that 3 weeks ago when they were running pickup games against each other, and you can definitely see it now as training camps officially opened up.
And they've actually split up into teams. Mark talked about trying to get as even of like 3 teams as they can possibly get, 20 guys in camp. So trying to get as many guys reps and playing time as they possibly can going against each other. There's been a mix of that drill work that they want to do, but more they want to be able to get guys out and playing and flowing and working on that spontaneous connection as opposed to necessarily doing a ton of teaching right now, which is possible because 75% of the guys are returners.
Which and that's what we've heard from so many of the players is just the continuity element. And something like continuity shows up in ways that you don't always expect. I think a lot of people think of it just as simple on-court chemistry of like, I know if I cut, he's going to find me. But there's so many different things that you can advance along, whether it's just in the verbiage you use and call outs. You don't have to spend 35 minutes in practice talking about this is how we do certain things. And it also makes it even easier for some of the new additions to slot into those sorts of things because you're not teaching the whole swath of the roster something new. It's basically baked in already. And so that continuity, I mean, it's existed from the way that summer league practices are done, the way that practices are done in the G League with the blue. So, I mean, it really gives you the ability, Nick, to like hit the ground running in so many different ways. And that's one of the things we've heard from so many of the guys is just that kind of comfort element to be able to advance along in a lot of these things.
Yeah, there's so many benefits to having so many returners and familiar faces out there on the floor. And we'll get into some more of that as well as kind of the mentality and the goal of training camp for these guys this season. But we've all been up at the Thunder Ion every single day this week, and we've seen a lot of different things. So let's get into what made us look so far throughout training camp. Nick, let's start with you. What made you look in training camp so far?
Well, we've already talked a little bit about that internal competition and 2 guys that know each other and know the ins and outs of each other's games better than anybody on this roster are Shea and Lou Dort. And so there's been a little, tete-a-tete in the media over the first few days between the 2 of them. Started with Lou, and I was asking him about, he's in this different stage of his career now than when he first started. Obviously, he kind of made a name for himself within the locker room by picking up Chris Paul and Dennis Schroeder full court in practices in training camp his first year. And so I was wondering, is he still doing that? He's in the gym taking charges in the second day of training camp. Is he, also picking up full court? He said, yeah, I'm doing it to Shea a little bit. Well, then come to find out, Shea is like, no, Lou's wasting his time. And so there's a little budding rivalry between the 2 Canadians there. And then somebody asked Shea about Cason Wallace. And so I had to ask, is Cason, he's a defensive-minded guy. Is he picking you up full court in practices? And Shea goes, no, he's a smart kid.
He knows better.
So the fun little war of words, but it's also just great competitiveness that's within the locker room and helps these guys gear up for the mentality that you have to have come regular season.
For sure.
I mean, for Lou picking up Shea full court, I mean, having done that now for 4 seasons, that only makes you a better defender.
For sure. The hidden areas of doing something like that, it also, when you have a player that's committed to doing that mentally and physically as often as a player like Dort does, it obviously wears down the offensive player a lot, but it also just drains their possession.
Exactly.
They're crossing midcourt, with like 18, 19 on the clock, and they're getting into their offense a little bit later. So there's huge hidden benefits of doing that. And, I'm sure that it's fun in practice, and Lou likes to be a pest. And that's what makes a guy like Lou Dort special, honestly, is that he practices the way he plays.
Exactly.
He really does. He's out there taking charges in drills. And
yes.
That's just what he does.
And that's the epitome of iron sharpening iron, right? We hear from Lou and Shea, they make each other better offensively and defensively. We hear from Trey Mann and Kenrich Williams, when they go at it one-on-one, they're making each other better. And so you really see all of that competitive fire showing up in practice and actually moving these guys forward. All right.
As a quick aside,
yeah.
You mentioned the charges. Lou has drawn 189 offensive fouls over the last 3 years. That's far and away more than anybody in the league. The vast majority of those have been kind of coming around screens, getting those illegal screens. If he adds taking charges to his arsenal, then we bet those record books are going to be broken.
Unlocking new levels.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize also, I don't think everyone realizes the difference between an offensive foul and taking a charge, which those are 2 very different things. Jalen Williams has the hold on one, Jay Will, and Lou Dort has the hold on the other. So let us know in the comments if you need us to break down the definition between an offensive foul and taking a charge. All right, Royce, what about you? What made you look so far in training camp?
So it was after practice. I don't know if we're supposed to say today. What is today? Today is Thursday.
Thursday.
Yes. All right. Got to keep it evergreen.
It's the number of days between OU and Texas.
Right. That's right.
Playing. That's what's going on through.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Minus 2 days, I believe, is what it is. But honestly, it was just something simple. And I know a lot of times it can seem very cliche to say good player works hard, but like Shea Alexander, it was pretty stark to see him. All the players are on the court shooting after practice Thursday. They all kind of go through it. SGA is still out there. He's working with a lot of the assistant coaches, working very kind of specifically on a certain type of shot. And you could tell he's really honed in on it. And, all the players kind of go, they do their thing. They're playing shooting game. They do their media. Coach Mark talks. Another player does media. Shea's still out there doing it. Mm-hmm. The court kind of clears out. Media clears out. I was still there watching Shea. Shea's still going. Yeah. I went and ate lunch. Shea's still going. So, he was out there working on this specific thing for probably over an hour. And to me, it's just a great demonstration of his mindfulness when it comes to his craft. I mean, we've talked about this a lot with Shea. He is so dedicated to the details and being better at everything he can possibly be. Everybody always asks, what is Shea going to get better at? Well, he's going to get better at a lot of things because he takes that type of mindset at one specific type of shot that he wants to improve upon. And for a guy that just had the most successful season of his NBA career, he's not slowing down when it comes to the work stuff. He's, if anything, it looks to me like he's doubling down on it. He wants to work even harder.
He also revealed that his off-season workout regimen, even physically with the way he works out his body, is all tailored towards the types of actions that he's actually going to do on the court. Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty fascinating, the way that he talked about some of these strange drills where he's kneeling on a balance ball and trying to catch a tennis ball at the same time. It's all calibrated towards these herky-jerky motions that he's doing, the way that he attacks the lane in such an unorthodox style. Very, very smart, obviously, to completely tune your body in the offseason to how you're actually going to get your points in the regular season.
I just think it's so smart because I talked to Shea during media day, and the balance between working harder versus working smarter was something that he had to learn early on, and it's something that Trey Mann has had to learn just to when it comes to good player wants to work hard to get better, right? But it's easy to just overwork yourself and not be efficient in your work, not necessarily get the most out of your work that you possibly can. And it sounds like what you're seeing from Shea and what we're hearing is that he is so intentional and hyper-focused on the areas that he knows he wants to improve and knows that can get stronger, can get better, and he hones in on that rather than just going out there and just spending time on the floor.
1,000 shots.
Exactly, for the sake of just being out there on the floor. He's very intentional about it, and that's working smarter and working harder at the same time, which is a very difficult balance to make.
I also didn't find it a coincidence that the guy that was with Shea at his basket for the vast majority of that post-practice shooting session today was Kaysen Wallace. Yeah. And Shea was incorporating him into the drills that he was doing, some drive and dish for catch and shoot looks for Kaysen. definitely a good opportunity for the Rook to see how an all NBA player gets ready for a season.
Put on the backpack and start studying if I'm Cason Wallace, because there's no better player to study and how do I improve during my NBA career than SGA, because he's done it every single season he's been in the league so far.
Just taking notes over there on that basket. All right, here's what made me look so far in training camp. We've talked a lot about the returners. However, there are some newcomers that are raising the ante on a couple of traditions in this post-practice time that we normally get to see. After practice, all the media comes in, and typically at one basket in the far corner, there is a very, very intense barn burner of a shooting game going on between, it's an assortment of players each practice, but generally it's Tre Mann, Isaiah Joe, Lindy Waters is typically in that mix as well.
Kenrich is always involved. Yeah.
Jalen Williams, Jay Will was very incorporated in it last year. Well, this year, the stakes have just gone up because now you've added Davis Bertans, who I promise you made 10 shots in a row when I just spent 45 seconds watching 10 shots in a row, and Tre Mann won. But still, I was like, this is going to be an intense game this season.
It was fun to watch. I was watching it too, Paris. And yeah, Tre Mann won. And I mean, the way the structure of the game kind of wins is that once you get a winner and you go back around kind of the world, everybody gets a chance to match it all over again. Like if they can go from station to station and not miss a shot, they can tie him up. And everybody kind of went on. And then when Bertans took over, he started reining them in, and it got kind of tense.
It got close.
He got to the corner.
I think he needed to make one more. The last shot that they make, they have to kind of do a move and then shoot it, and he missed the one off the move. Yep. Or he was about to come back around with a chance to actually tie Tre Mann. And Tre Mann was like celebrating.
Yes.
He was walking around.
So excited.
He was like, I won this. It's like, you didn't win anything with Bertans still out there.
Right. You got to make sure that the book is closed before you start celebrating.
And he can start knocking them down in a hurry.
Yeah, we talked to J-Dub afterwards, and he was like, yeah, we're going to hear about that from Tre for about a week now.
Well, you deserve to brag after beating that collection of guys, and that's going to make that, iron sharpens iron thing even more prolific here with this team because, and Josh mentioned this, a couple years ago, this was not a good three-point shooting team. And they worked their way into kind of more of the middle of the pack last season. Obviously, still a long way to go in terms of where they want to be shooting the ball, but you add this influx of talent of guys that we know can hit that shot from behind the arc, a guy like Bertans. And, we're going to just continue to see that competition and that internal development on that shot making. You know
what was the funniest part of that shooting game? I just thought of this moment. There was a part early on in it, Paris, where Bertans was kind of falling behind and he missed a couple in a row. And so you know what he did to try to get himself going? He ran to the wing and ran back. It's like
I saw that. He was like on the move.
He wanted to get on the move. It's like that was his way to like make one. It was like, all right, I need to shoot one where I'm off the, I'm moving to catch it.
For any other player, that would just raise the level of difficulty by 10.
If you've ever watched Bertans play, he loves to move without the basketball, and he loves that quick release three. And so that's what he did to kind of like get himself going.
That's the fascinating thing about him is like, and we talked to Josh about this today too, is most guys that are at his size that are a shooter are standing still in the corner, not mobile. They might do a one dribble pump fake and then get their shot. He is like JJ Redick coming off of screens, and the way that he tries to find shots, hunt shots, and move without the ball. That is a really fascinating dynamic. He's like, it's like a 6'10" Isaiah Joe out there in some sense.
With a massively quick release the ball is in his hands and it's up immediately in a blink of an eye.
For sure. And plus just within the style, and there will, I think, be some adjustments to the way the Thunder play. And SGA's led the league in drives the last 3-4 years or whatever it is. Making sure you're not in his way and you're not cutting. And so you've got to kind of work through some of those timing elements. But I do think it really accentuates Bertans' strength of shooting off the move with the way that this Thunder team plays, the way that this Thunder team drives and kicks and drives again and moves the ball from one side of the floor to the other. To me, he's just gonna be shifting we've talked about it a lot, Paris, where you just draw the eyes of a defender a little bit and they just look over, and a guy like Josh Giddey's finding somebody else that's open on a cut. And so those little small details of the game can have a big impact. Even a guy like Bertans that's moving without the ball, not to shoot a three, but just the
threat,
that gravity that pulls eyes and maybe a little attention away can make a big difference.
Which is what makes this training camp so interesting, right? Seeing how all of these pieces come together onto the floor. And we talked about the things that made us look. Let's get into some of the observations in terms of the themes that these guys have really been honing in on so far when we've gotten a chance to talk to them. And one of the biggest themes is the goal and the mindset so far in training camp. And obviously, every training camp, you're setting a foundation, right? You're kind of setting the tone for this upcoming season. And for the Thunder, they're stacking. They are continuing on the work that they've been building over these last couple of years. And this has all been just setting a foundation for the upcoming season and how they want to play.
And it's also preparing the mentality that you're going to have that this season is not a highway that you can look all the way down and see, from Oklahoma to California where Route 66 ends. There are a lot of twists and turns that are going to happen. How can this group get prepared over the next couple weeks before the season starts for all of those twists and turns, for the adversity that it's going to face? That's something that Mark Daigneault talked about, is just like, how can we make sure that these guys' minds are really wrapped around what's coming at them, and that the first 2 weeks of the season don't define you, good or bad. And that stretch of 5 games where you don't play very well, that's where you've got to have extreme resilience. And you have to have resilience the other direction too when you're on a 5-game win streak, to not let your guard down.
I love that quote that Mark had, the one that you're referencing, because he started it off by saying, training camp's exciting. It's fun. The first day, they always go well because there's no adversity, right? Like every team has a great first day of training camp because there's no adversity, there's no tension, there's no pull. Well, it's our job to make sure that our guys are mentally prepared going into the season to be able to handle that adversity that comes their way.
Statistically speaking, I mean, every team's going to go through a losing streak. Most of the time, 3, 4, 5 games at some point this year. The 82-game schedule is very long and it's very arduous. And so it is one of those things, especially with a young team like this, that I think is excited about a lot of the previous work that they've done. Everybody understands the improvement that they made last year, both in the win column and also just net rating and just the progress that was made. The progress that was made the years before that got them to that point. Everybody feels good about where they're going into this year, but that doesn't guarantee you anything. That doesn't promise you anything. Your record starts 0-0. You got to start all over again. You're not, just because you were basically a top 10 defense last year, and now you're adding in a 7-foot shot blocker. That doesn't mean you're going to just take a natural step of progression forward.
Right.
Everybody knows progress is not linear. And, Sam Presti said it at his availability. He's very confident this team is going to be better at the end of the year than they are right now. And I think everybody feels that way because we've seen the proof is in the pudding with the last few years. They've gotten better every single year. But you also still have to do the work and go through that process to get there. And that's going to require some adversity. And, you can't ever anticipate when it comes. Maybe an injury, maybe a losing streak, maybe a bad call, whatever it might be. You're just going to have to deal with it and then move on to the next one.
Yeah, and the Thunder historically is really good about not making any predictions about itself verbally. What Mark said is this team can't even make any predictions about itself internally in their own heads. Don't come into this season with any preconceived notions. Just like you're saying, Royce, you can't carry 40 wins with you, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get 40 wins again this year, just because you happen to be a year older. So that's the mindset that they're really trying to craft right now, is that they've got to earn every single one of these things that they get, and they're not gifted anything from this past years that they've been building up.
And make sure that they stick to the standards that they set internally and make sure they're hitting those every single day. Another really common thing, and we touched on it already, was just the continuity and the familiar faces in the building so far, and how that also not only helps the guys that are there, but also helps the new guys that are coming in to be able to ask questions, to be able to kind of get into the fold of guys who are really familiar with the system, familiar with the play style, and can kind of help them get, integrated well.
The team is doing a really nice job of just making those connection points. We've talked about, guys, trying to get connected with the playmakers. There's so many playmakers on this team. So being able to, find shots for the Bertanzas of the world and trying to find alley-oops for Chet and all that kind of stuff. There's all these points of connection that need to be made during this time of year.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, I think with the continuity element, it goes even just beyond, the players themselves, but same coaching staff, same messaging. The organization itself is just incredibly stable. And those sorts of things, when you have that kind of alignment throughout it, it just pays dividends. And again, it's not necessarily something that you just can see, physically tangible every single day, but it's the small areas that matter, where you can, I don't want to say cut corners, but you can advance through things quicker than maybe you otherwise. You can be just more efficient with the way that you approach things. Obviously, the way that the Thunder have operated, and one of the reasons that they have gotten to this point developmentally, is because of how thorough They've approached everything, but at a certain point, you do kind of advance through a lot of things, and you can lean on the fact that you've got the continuity. You've got a little more veteran leadership on the team, even though the team is still absurdly young.
Very young.
But Josh Giddey's about to turn 21. He's really growing up, guys.
Yeah.
You do have a couple guys. The Kenrich Williamses, Bertans is 30 years old. Micic, even though he's a rookie, he's a very accomplished player. So you've kind of got that sprinkling of veteran leadership, and then a guy like SGA, who I think is, he's still a very young player, but he's got some innate leadership skills.
Right.
So all that stuff kind of packaged together in the continuity, I think just makes something like a Thunder training camp very efficient to where they can get a lot of things done.
The last thing I want to talk about is just everyone that we spoke to has hinted at this has just been a really good start. They've been able to hit the ground running. Nobody looks like they've missed a beat when they got to training camp. And that all had to do with the fact that these guys individually had really strong summers. And you mentioned how young this team is. Well, when you have such young players, summers are drastic for young players, right? That's why all these guys typically come back looking very different, especially from a physical sense. There's so much that can be accomplished over the summer, and we've heard that practices have been very sharp, they've been very physical, and they've been really, really tight in terms of being able to get through things very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, Usman, I think, is taller. J-Dub looks like a totally different person,
right?
Just in terms of how built he is now, in terms of how he attacks his workouts with his body. These guys are still evolving. And that's to your point, Royce, like this team in the atmosphere around the team is constantly evolving too, as these players come into the fold, as they get better. This whole thing is an organism that's shifting. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to pick up from where they were in New Orleans and Minnesota in the play-in game and be able to just drop that right into the start of the season.
For sure. And just speaking of the off-season element, you've got a lot of these guys that played internationally. We've talked about that some of, the advantage that gives you and just your sharpness. Josh Giddey talked about it a little bit. SGA's talked about just kind of the advantage that gives you of, SGA talked about it the other day of you can try to simulate these sorts of things. You can try to go into games where you have refs or you have pickup games that are kind of like a real game, but there's nothing that can really, help you simulate the real thing. And so playing those international games, I think, helps a lot of these players, whether it's conditioning or just, the sharpness of their game. They can kind of come into training camp with a little bit more juice there because of what they've been doing over the last month before it.
Yeah, and Josh was saying that it's not even just about the X's and O's of bettering your game. It's just staying in the habit of playing real meaningful basketball games and coming into training camp with that sort of experience. One final big theme, everyone was very curious about how Chet Holmgren was going to be incorporated into this play style and how he was going to be incorporated into training camp as well. We heard a lot about Chet over these last 3 days, but even before then, our very own Nick Gallo had a chance to sit down with him leading up to this season. We will have that interview right after the break.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at CoopAleWorks.com.
We've got Chet Holmgren with us now. Great to have you on the Thunder Basketball Universe pod. First appearance on the pod since your draft press conference, so we can officially call you a friend of the pod now. And there's a phrase that this team lives by that I think you are just perfect for, which is called the moment of truth. What does that mean to you, that moment of truth?
The moment of truth is when you find out what people are really made of. It's like it's a split-second thing where you don't really have time to think. Like you see who's really about it, like either charges or contesting somebody at the rim or diving on a loose ball or whatever it might be. You really see who's willing to put their body on the line for the game and try to go make a play.
You're the last line of defense for your teammates. All your guys are always, depending on you. You are kind of that moment of truth for this team in a lot of ways, don't you feel?
At times, yeah. It will be my job to be in that moment of truth, you could say, and try to make a play on the ball. Like I said, whether it's a charge, going up to protect the basket, make a play at the rim, or dive on the ball, whatever it might be, just try to serve in those moments of truth.
Yeah, because the moment of truth, that applies on the other end of the floor too, where you're going to be the one, okay, I got to take this shot. This is my shot right now. It's in rhythm. It's serving the game, as you said. Or, hey, I've got to make the next best play. What's your mindset on that end of the floor in terms of that same mentality?
Just doing whatever I can to try and raise the ceiling of the team and do what's needed to help win that game that night, whether it is to take that shot or to move the ball or to put the ball on the floor and make a play, whatever's needed.
You mentioned kind of serving the game. That has been, seems to me at least, been a part of not just your basketball personality, but your personality as a human being too for a long time. You've played in so many different settings with so many great players from since you were a little kid. How has that sort of identity been honed within you?
Yeah, you said serving the game. That's a great way to put it. It's a back and forth relationship between me and basketball. Basketball has taken me across the world and given me all the opportunities in the world. And I think it'd be ignorant, or however you might say it, to not take full advantage of that or appreciate that. And what basketball has done for me, and try to do the same for basketball, and put everything into it and play it the best I can.
The remarkable thing is that was taken away from you for a bit, and all of your work was done in the dark. Can you shed a little light on that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than if I wasn't hurt. I would have been playing, and I would have been able to showcase some of that work that I was doing that wasn't seen. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity last year, and now that opportunity has arisen, and I'm really excited and I look forward to it.
How well do you know the Thunder strength and conditioning guys at this point?
Those are some of my best buddies.
Yeah, I bet. Sam has talked about, if there was a time where your Super Bowl was being able to lift your ankle up and flex your foot the way that it was. Take me through some of those moments to now, when you have a lot of different Super Bowls every time you're going to be able to strap up and go to war with your teammates.
Yeah, throughout the whole process, there were a lot of Super Bowls, there were a lot of toilet bowls, there were ups and downs. Some days sucked, some days were exciting because, like you said, I was doing something that was progress, but it still wasn't anything close to where I wanted to be. And, now I feel like we're really close, and, I'm excited to get out there with the guys and really start putting things together.
You're a player that already, before any of this, it's so clear that you don't take any possession for granted on the floor, the way that you play, the tenacity, the toughness. Where do you think that came from within you to be able to give it right back to anybody that's trying to play physical, or the ability to be able to be a competitor on every single possession?
I say part of it was nurture, part of it was nature. I was just a hard-headed kid, didn't like people saying they got one over on me or anything on or off the court. And then also I was growing up with great coaches and people around me. I was taught not to take a play for granted because, if you do, there's somebody right behind you who isn't going to. So, you just got to play every possession like it truly matters, which it does. So that's the attention to detail I try to bring every night.
Do you remember when you fell in love with the game?
No, a long time ago.
I'm sure the competitiveness and all of that was part of it as well. Growing up in Minneapolis, you said you had a lot of great coaches. Can you kind of take me back to Minnie and where you grew up, and some things that made that place so special to you, and really stand out to you?
Yeah, it was special to me just because there was a great culture around it. In the last few years, there's been a lot of basketball players that have come out of there and done really good things. And before we knew we would be able to do that, we were all playing against each other in AAU in 6th grade and 8th grade and stuff. Some of us were really good back then. Some of us weren't that good and got good. You know what I'm saying? Just that culture of it, and like I said, the people around me that helped me get to where I was. Coach Suggs way back in the day when I was in like 3rd grade, and I was probably the worst player in the state. Still kept it up and believed in me, and it paid dividends for me.
How about off the court, back home? What are some favorite places for you to go, either out just in nature or in the city, or restaurants?
There's a lot of places. Some of the well-known ones are like Manny's downtown. You got to go there. Steakhouse, great food, big portions. fairly expensive. Ocean Air, other places. There's, Minnesota's known for good food, great diversity. There's good Jamaican food and African food and, all types of different stuff there. So you just kind of got to show up and have an open palate to try new things. But it's great. There's other things like there's 10,000 lakes, the Mississippi. There's a lot of stuff to do, walk around, get into out there. I'm glad I grew up there.
Were you a lake guy? Did you go fishing and do all that kind of stuff?
Yep. We had a cabin when I was younger. Then we got too busy for it and unfortunately ended up selling it.
Was there a basketball hoop there?
Oh, there was.
All right. Well, so you could travel anywhere and make sure you got a game in and get that competitive fire going. As you prepared for this season, I'm sure your excitement level has been through the roof for all of the reasons, but thinking about your teammates, these guys that can play make for you, that you can play make for, what goes through your mind as you get a chance to play with these guys?
Excitement. Going into the season, there's so many unknowns, and some of that excitement is to start figuring out those unknowns and making them knowns. And, we're going to do that from day one of training camp and show up with intensity and focus and, get better each day.
You're an all spots of the floor kind of guy. You mentioned all the unknowns. What goes through your mind in terms of just the possibilities of the way that you can impact the game with this team?
I try to go through all of the different opportunities that I'll have and possibilities of what will happen and try to game plan and prepare for them. But at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is prepare to, stay light on your feet and improvise with, how the game goes. You can't script the game. So I know a lot of people think Vegas can, but I don't think it's possible. So
no, and you can't script a season either. And there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be 5-game win streaks. There's going to be 4-game losing streaks. With all the positive energy and momentum, how do you all still maintain that perspective as such a young team in this league?
I feel like we've had a great organization of front office people and coaching staff that have helped instill the right thought processes in us. We have a young team, but we have wise people around us, and some of that's rubbing off on us.
As a final question, as you think about this sort of career that you're embarking on a little bit, you had a rookie year where the team didn't get to have you, but you got to have some experiences. What do you think are the biggest things that you were able to bring into this year that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise?
My effort level, my focus level, as much as I brought that last year, it wasn't really able to factor into what the team was doing. And, I'm excited to be able to do that this year.
Awesome. Well, Chet, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
So much excitement coming into this season, just surrounding seeing Chet on the floor. And we've heard from several of his teammates just how happy they are that he's able to participate in training camp, but also they're looking forward to seeing his emotions out there on the floor for the first time.
Yeah, it was so cool just getting to sit down with him and get a feel for where he's at in all of this. He had such a unique year last year. The cool thing that I took from hearing him talk about that, just listening back, is his work and his approach last season would have been the exact same whether he had been healthy or not. And so, yes, his Super Bowl was being able to lift up his foot and, being able to walk again and all that stuff. But the way that he attacked that, the mentality behind that is the exact same as he has worked out all this summer to get prepared for this season. That's something that Sam Presti has talked about, is just the mentality with Chet is real. And Royce, I know that you also got an opportunity to sit down with him. And if you haven't read Royce's piece on OKCthunder.com, the descriptive writing is unbelievable. And also just the insight into the last 14 months of Chet's life is too.
Yeah, and it was awesome hanging out with Chet the last couple weeks. And, I think one of the things that really stood out to me, and I'm sure you guys probably got it in just your conversations with him too, is that he's a really kind of deep thinker, thoughtful person, really considers what he's going to say. But also I think he was very reflective on while the adversity of last year was very difficult and very frustrating, and there were a lot of difficult, struggling days, but he's also thankful for what he went through in a lot of different ways. And he fully acknowledges that he feels like he's going to be a better basketball player because of it. But, Sam Presti did talk about it, Nick. One of the things about Chet is that his mindset is kind of been the way it always has been. He's a fearless, competitive, very physical type of player. And, he's walking on the court. He was asked the other day after a practice about is the injury in your mind at all? And he was like, no, that's just not the way that Chet is. And so, there was a lot of things to me that really stood out just about Chet and his mentality. And, he's always kind of just been this player, but also when you think about the way that he transitions into this team, everybody's very curious to see what he's going to look like. There's going to be an adjustment period, I think, for both him and the team. Sam Presti talked about that this isn't just Chet's first year. This is our first year with Chet.
Right.
And, Chet feels that himself. He fully acknowledges that of he's never played a competitive basketball game with SGA yet. They practiced a lot, but there's a different thing when you get out on the court and you play with another player, and in a lot of ways, SGA is the best player he's ever played with too. So, there's going to be some adjustments, but one of the things that was the through line in all my conversations with Chet is he's just looking for a way to be additive. He just wants to add to the team, do what I can do. I think that you're going to see a lot of games where, maybe it is a little bit of a struggle, but I don't think at any point you're going to be doubting, is Chet Holmgren trying? Because he's going to be trying. He is a competitive monster that wants to do everything he can possibly do to help a team win a game. And that is his entire focus all the time.
Yeah. And that ties into what we just heard from him about the moment of truth and how he really embodies that as a player, as a guy that in that split second, there are no business decisions being made. He is going after the basketball. Yeah. He's not, letting anybody take anything from him easily. And, to your point, Royce, there's an opportunity for the Thunder to kind of research throughout this year.
For sure.
How can he be the most efficient and most effective player for this team, most impactful, I think was the word that Mark Daigneault used. And then how does that play style fit into what the Thunder has on the floor as well? So kind of orienting all of that together is going to be part of this process of exploration for the team. But ultimately the goal is, all right, how can Chet play his best ball? How can Shea play his best ball? Josh his best ball? We've seen this team do that with some of these other pieces. This is just one more to do it with.
Yeah, and I think you saw it a little bit even in Summer League. Think back to Chet's first game this most recent Summer League. It was a little bit of a struggle in the first half. He was, I think, trying to do a little too much. He was a little antsy. He wanted to prove himself. And he even acknowledged, he'd spent the last 6 months on the court doing a lot of individual stuff. And he was kind of eager to show off some of those individual things that he had been working on. And Chet's the type of player with a lot of self-awareness. Talking with the coaching staff, you could see the progression through Summer League where he got off the ball a little bit more, got in the pick and roll a little bit more, relied on his teammates a little bit more. He became a much better play finisher. And then that opened up a lot of other things in his game. And so I think you kind of saw a little bit of a snapshot of that learning process that the team is going to have to go through with Chet. There's going to be times where I think that Chet can clear out and he can show what he can do. But there's also going to be times where you're going to have to take a step back and say, well, let's figure out how that reworks back into the concept of the group. And again, those are just things that you just got to go through the schedule and you got to play the games and you've got to learn those things on the fly because as much as you can watch film and say, okay, that's what I'm going to imagine myself doing. Right. Chet talked to me about that sort of thing was, there's no substitute for seeing it up close and personal, and experiencing it. He was talking about some of the pickup games he played this summer against some of the great players in the NBA. And, you can watch something on TV and feel like you're picking up some nuances of their game. It's a whole different ball game when you're standing right in front of them and trying to guard them in that moment. And those are things that Chet's fully aware that he's going to have to learn. One other thing, Nick, you pointed it out that he is completely fearless in trying to block shots. Chet also fully understands he's going to get dunked on.
Yes.
And he doesn't care.
That comes with the territory.
And he just
for
understands that. He's like, I'm going to get one punched on me, but that doesn't mean that just the way he put it to me was that means that guy did his job on that play and I need to do mine better the next time. And it's that type of mentality that I think makes Chet pretty special.
That's a mentality that Lou Dort has too. And that's why, again, this kind of all seems to be such a good fit is, there's times that Lou's going to get 30 scored on him, but it's going to be the hardest 30 of that guy's season. And that's the goal for the Thunder defensively.
I think that speaks to the fact that the quote that stood out to me was his mindset is as unique as he is. And that's something that you put in your article. And the other thing that my favorite part of the whole story was the fact that Chet always was holding a basketball when he was talking to you.
Everywhere he goes.
It's just like, you're in the car, there's a basketball. You're out in the field somewhere, there's a basketball.
He's like, I mean, it truly, like, if you're anywhere around Chet, I think if there's just a round object anywhere, can I say that real quick? Can I have that? I've noticed that about him everywhere he goes. He wants a best. I remember last year, there'd be times where he'd be walking around, he wasn't playing in a game, but he'd be walking around the arena with a ball under his arm. And he's the type of guy that he is a basketball junkie through and through. He loves it so much. And that's one of the things about last year is that's the first time he's ever had to really miss games because of an injury. And that was a difficult thing for him. But again, I think that can be something that in a reflective way, he's looking at the ways that it's going to make him sharper and better in the long term. And I think it says a lot about him that he was able to get through it the way he did, because he even talked about that he was looking at this team and he felt like that they were a boat that was sailing to somewhere special, and he did not want to be the anchor that was holding them back just because he wasn't playing. And again, that's that team mindset that he has. As difficult as it was for him personally, he was still trying to think about what was in the best interest of the team. And again, I think that's just what makes Chet a pretty special player.
Yeah, this kid has a really, really good head on his shoulders. And for those who don't know, the article is titled Persistent Pursuit, How Chet Holmgren's Road Back Was Rooted in Work. And you can find it on OKCthunder.com. Royce Young, really well done with that article. Learned so much about our very own Chet Holmgren. All right, time to get into what's on tap for the Thunder. Well, if you look past the weekend, the Thunder's going to be playing basketball on Monday. They take on the San Antonio Spurs inside of Paycom Center. And then next thing you know, we've hit the ground running and the preseason is in full motion.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that the first chance for everybody to come down and see this team is Monday. You can be here inside Paycom Center to watch this. We'll see whether Victor Wembanyama plays for the San Antonio Spurs in that game. But that kicks off a really rapid-fire slate of preseason games where OKC is then going to be on to Montreal next week. We'll have more for you from the Thunder Basketball Universe, of course, beyond that. But, I mean, we've got real actual basketball to cover as opposed to just what these guys are saying back and forth to the media in practice.
And once it starts, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. No, it does not. I hope you enjoyed your summer because we're rolling now. So be sure to stay tuned to OKCthunder.com and at OKC Thunder on all social media channels throughout training camp. We've got you covered. We'll be at every media availability and at every game. So everything that you need to know, we've got you covered. But until then, we want to thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to Chet Holmgren. Thank you so much to Royce Young. And until next time, Thunder up and catch you later.